Okay, this video is part two in a two-part series on C# events and delegates. Now, in the first part, we talked about the basic concepts. What are events? What are delegates? What do they mean? And how do you apply them to your C# application? In this video, we're going to actually apply those concepts, and we're going to develop an application that uses events and delegates. And as we mentioned in the last video, the application we're going to develop is a simple image manipulation application, and it's going to look a little bit like this. It's basically got 3 buttons on it and 2 picture boxes, and the open image button will basically, you click it and it will implement the open file dialog, which gives you an open file requester, and you can pick what file you want to open. And it will load that file into the main application, and the main application will take that file, that bitmap image, and populate these 2 picture boxes. Once you've got that, you can click this manipulate image, and it will take this image and send it to a separate class, and that class will basically go through each pixel in this image, and there's about 2 million pixels in this image, and we'll go through each pixel in that image and evaluate the red, green, and blue values, and it will modify the colors. It will, in this case, it will get rid of all the blues and leave you with just red and green, and when it's done, it will send that modified image to this second picture box, and here you see all the blues are removed in this second picture box. And the events will take place when this modified image has been completed. Like I said, it will take about 3 seconds for this image to be modified. And at that point, when this image is completed being modified, it will send an event to the main application. And the event handler in that main Windows application will get that notice, and in this label, it will print that the event handler received the event. So we'll go through now and look at the basic design of this application. Now, I know a lot of people like to just jump in and start coding, but I prefer to kind of design what I'm going to do first and think about it and figure the best way to design it before I jump in and start getting lost in the code. So here's a basic diagram of how I'm going to lay it out. I've got 3 main players here. I've got my standard Windows form application, Form 1. I've got another file operations class, and my third player is an image manipulation class. Okay, so 3 main components to this application. Now, what will happen is when I load this form, when I click the open file button, it will send a request to this file operations class that will give me the open file dialog, and I select an image file. It will load it, and it will load it into a bitmap in the .NET bitmap class, and that is basically an array of pixels. It converts that image into an array of pixels, each with a red, green, and blue value, and also a transparency. And it will give me this bitmap in my main application. It will return that. And then once I've got that, I can then send that bitmap into the image manipulation class. And I will pass it as a parameter into the manipulate method inside this class. And that's the method that will do the hard work. It will go through on each of the 2 million pixels, read the red, green, and blue values, modify them, and save into a new modified image. And again, it will take a few seconds to do that. But once it's done, it will then initiate the event saying, hey, I'm finished with this. And all of this stuff in red is the code that we will need, or the design of the code for the events and the event handling. So I mentioned in the previous videos that each of the players in this event process has a job to do. And we'll start with this image manipulation class. So since this image manipulation class is the one that's going to send the event, it's kind of running the show. So it's defining, we said that you have to define the event handler delegate, the one that maintains the list of all the subscribers to be notified when the event happens. So I need to have a definition in this image manipulation class of the event handler delegate. And also it's got to have a method internally that goes and sends the event out. So it's got two big components that are needed in this class to do the event handling. And in the receiving class, the main application, it will receive the event, and when it knows that that image has been modified, it can then go through and populate this picture box, which resides in the main Windows Form application. It will put that modified image into that second picture box. So that's the basic design here. I've got the three components, and here is what we need to do the events. Now, unlike the first video where we talked about just sending an event and no other information to the subscriber, in this case, in order for this main Windows application to populate this second picture box, it needs to grab this modified image. So how is it going to do that? Well, as we mentioned before, this event can be not just an event notification, it can also have an argument called event args that passes some information. And in this case, the information will be the location of this modified bitmap. So not only will we send out an event notification, hey, I finished modifying, but also here is the location of the bitmap that you can grab and then populate this picture box with it. It's like we talked in the first video where the guy making copies will get on the PA system and say, hey, I finished, and by the way, if you want a copy that I made, then you can go, it's located at the table near the water cooler, you can go grab it. So it's the same concept here. It's an event plus a location. So now that we've got the basic design of this, let's jump into Visual Studio and start developing the application itself. Okay, so here we are. I opened up a new Windows Forms application. And I've gone ahead to save a little time and populated this form with the basic components we're going to need. I've got three buttons. I've got a button to open the image, and I have named it BTN Open. I've got a button to manipulate the image, which is called BTN Manipulate. And then I've got an exit button, which I call BTN Exit. And I've also added two picture boxes, picture box 1 and picture box 2. And I've added a border, just a simple border on them. And also it's important that you set the size mode to zoom so that the image you bring in will fit inside this. So it's basically those components. I've also added a label here to take the, so I can, when I get the event notifying me that the image has been processed, this will tell me I've got the event notification. But basically that's it. You can go through and set that up fairly quickly. Once you've got that, now we can go into the Forms application, and you can see I've already got the click events for the open the file, manipulate, and exit. So we're pretty much set up. We can start developing the code, and you recall that we had this diagram which showed that we've got three major components. We've got the existing Windows Form 1, which is right here. We also need a file operations class and an image manipulation class. So we can go ahead right now and click on the project, right click, and go down to add, and down at the bottom we can add a class, and we will call that class I'll name it File Operations. Okay, so now you can see we've got another tab that came up, was got the file operations. Then we can go in and add another class, which is the image manipulation class. So we'll add class and name it image manipulation class. So now we're all set. We've got image manipulation, file operations, and the basic form. So now the first thing I'll do is I'll put in some code for the file operations. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. I'll kind of copy and paste because I don't want to spend a lot of time. This is a basic open file dialog, and I'll paste in the code for that so you can see basically what we're going to Control C and then Enter Control V. We do have to add a using system.drawing to recognize the bitmap class, and also the system.windows.forms, and then I can do the file opening. So basically what I've done here is I've defined a image, a bitmap that we're going to bring in, and I've got a method, a public method, to open the file, and it's going to return this bitmap. So I use the standard open file dialog, new open file dialog, and I'm setting the initial directory at C images. So it'll go into the C images directory, and it will apply this filter in the open file dialog, which only filters out the JPEG, PNG, and bitmap. And then if it's successful, it will take the image from that file and make a new bitmap, which is called new image, and it will return new image to the requester. And let me add this guy here, and we're all set. So you're pretty much all set now, so you can open up a file, read it in, and return it as new image. Okay, now back in the Windows Forms class, the main class, there's some setup work we know we're going to have to do. And one of those things is we know we're going to be reading in a bitmap from the open file dialog. And we also know we've got two classes here, the image manipulations class and the file operations class, that we're going to have to instantiate. So I'm going to just paste the code for that. Basically, I've defined a bitmap as the new file coming in, and I've instantiated the image manipulation class and the file operations class as modify RGB. That's the object for the image manipulation class, and get file is the object for the file operations. Now the other thing we can do real quick is for the exit, we can say application.exit and get that out of the way. Now the next thing we can do fairly quickly, recall we set up this file operations class and we instantiated it, and the object name is getFile. So what we can do is we can access that. I'll just throw in a little code here. Basically, we're accessing the open file. Remember, there's the method in here, open file, which returns the bitmap that we're opening from the file. And we're assigning it to new file, and that was the bitmap that we already declared. Okay, so before we proceed, let's run this and make sure everything's okay so far. We'll do start. Hey, it works. Open image, and the open file dialog works. Pick an image, open, and nothing happens. It doesn't display our image. So now we know that we need to have some sort of method that will display the image. So what I'll do is I will save some time. I will paste in a method that I made, and it's public void display image, and it takes a bitmap as input and also an integer that defines which window, which picture box you're going to put the image in. So if window is 1, then it will put it in picture box 1. If it's 2, it will put it in picture box two, and if it's anything else, it'll put it in both picture boxes. So now we've got the method, and we need to call that method in this button open. So when you open the file, it will automatically display it. So we can say display image, and we'll say new file, and let's say 3 because we want it to display in both picture boxes. Okay, so we're calling this display image, feeding it this new file that we brought in, and saying display it in both. So let's run that. Open image, pick an image. Hey, it works. Okay, so we've displayed it in both, and we can exit. So now we know we're good. We've got the input working, and we know we've got the display working. So now we need to decide what we're going to do next. So I'll bring over our design, and we'll see that everything here is working. So let's focus on this image manipulation class. And we said there's basically 3 parts. We've got to do some, we have to do a method that will manipulate. We feed it that bitmap we just brought in and send it to the manipulate method. It will do its stuff. And then when it's done, it will send out the event. But it also has to define the event handler delegate, and also have a method inside that will generate, it will publish that event. So let's go look at the image manipulation class and start deciding what it needs to do. Well, we said it needs to have a manipulate method that takes a bitmap as input. And we also need to define the event handler delegate. And we also need to add event method. And that is the method that basically defines how the event handlers will look. So that's the basic scope of what this image manipulation class will look like. Now the first thing, we need to have a method to do the manipulation. And what I'll do here is, again, to save some time, I'll just paste in some code. So the way this works is I've got the method, you call the method, like I showed here. We've got the manipulate method, you pass it a bitmap, and it will cycle through every pixel in that image, in that bitmap, and it will basically take the, it will get the pixel colors for every pixel, and it will change each pixel by zeroing out the blue. It'll just give you the R and G, but killing the blue. That's why the image will look kind of yellow. And then what it does, once it has that new color for each pixel, it will copy that into the old image and modify the old image with these new pixels. So it'll actually change that bitmap image to a new color. All of the pixels will have a new color. Then when it's all done with all of those pixels, it'll come out of this for loop, and it will call this method. And this is the event handler method that sends out the event to all the subscribers and says, hey, I'm finished modifying the image, and by the way, I'm passing this bitmap that I've modified so that you can access it. Okay, so the squiggly tells us that we haven't done that yet, and we know that because we've already said we need to add our event method in here somewhere. So one other thing we need to do is we need to define the event handler delegate. And what I will do is I will paste this already done one to save a bit of time. And this is the declaration of the event handler delegate. And you can see that it's event, and it's the event handler delegate. And this image finished is the event that is associated with this event handler delegate. So when it gets that event image finished, it will initiate the event handler delegate to notify all of the subscribers. Now, we also said that we need to pass it this bitmap as an event arg. So what we have to do, and what I've done here, is I've set up a separate event args, a custom event args that will pass that bitmap into the event handler delegate. Now, the way you do that is you have to set up a separate class. So I will go outside here and I will set up a separate class that is image event args. And that image event args, and it inherits from event args and says that the new event args are a bitmap that you can get or set, and that will be the event args that are used in this event handler delegate. So now the event args are the bitmap that you can get or set. So I've defined the event handler delegate. Here's the image, here's the event associated with that. And here is the image event args I am passing to it, and it's basically just that bitmap. And so the last thing I need to do is I need to put in the method that will handle this event. And here it is right here. The method, it needs to be protected virtual void. And I'm going to call that method onImageFinished, and I'm passing it a bitmap. And the syntax of this is a little bit kind of confusing, but it basically says if the event handler delegate has subscribers for this ImageFinished event, then invoke this method, and the sender is this class, and I'm instantiating new image event args, and I'm passing it the bitmap. So basically, when I'm finished modifying the image, I call image onImageFinished, pass it the bitmap, and that is this method here. And if there are subscribers, it will invoke this event handler delegate and pass it the image event args. So now we're pretty much done with our image manipulation class. You can see we've got this method. We're passing a bitmap. It does the work on all the pixels and gives you a new image. We've also defined our event handler delegate, and we are passing our custom image event args, and that's nothing more than a class we've defined here, image event args, which inherits from event args, and it's just a class that has a property which is the bitmap that we're going to be passing. And here we have the method that we're calling. When we're done with all this manipulation of the image, we call this onImageFinished method, pass it the bitmap, and this basically will check to see if the event handler delegate has subscribers. If it does, it will invoke this, and it takes as input this class, this object that initiated it, which is this right here, and it also instantiates this image event args class to give you an object that you are passing that has the bitmap as the event args argument. So here we're pretty much done. Now we just need to go back to the main form and do the final steps to make sure that we're all set on the main form. So basically there's two things we need to do as far as event handling in this main form. One is that we are going to have to develop an event handler that takes the event as input and also the bitmap, and it's going to then display the image, the modified image. But we also have to recall we need to subscribe that event handler with this event handler delegate, to make sure that we receive the events. So the first thing we can do is we can, I have some code for the event handler, and it looks something like this. You can see we've got a public void, and it's called onImageFinished, and the object is the sender, and the image event args, which we defined in the image manipulation, image event args, that is the argument we will be taking. And when we receive that, we will display the image, and we will pass it e.bitmap, which is the reference to the bitmap. So we will go to this display image, and the input will be this e.bitmap, the event argument from the event, and it will be on screen number 2. And then we will make the label 1.text as event handler received. Okay? So now we've got the event handler method, and the next thing we need to do is subscribe our event handler method to the event handler delegate. The way we do that is, recall we've got modify RGB is the image manipulation instance, dot image finished, and we add to that event handler the on image finished that we have down here. And now the last thing we need to do is actually call the manipulate method when we click on the button. So here's the method to call modify RGB, which is the instance of the image manipulation class. And the manipulate method, we pass it the new file. So now we should be all set to go through and do this. So let's run it. Do a start, open image, pick the image, and it fills both boxes. Then we can hit manipulate image, and it's taking its time, and suddenly you can see it changed the colors, and the event handler was received. So there you go. I hope it's been helpful and helped you figure out more about events and delegates and how you set them up and how you implement them. It can be kind of confusing, but I hope this has cleared up a little bit for you. So take care and have a good day.